I don't know. I don't know what's going on. Oh, I think we are live. Hey, friends. Welcome to Tea Time with Ali Abdal. Tea Time with Dr. Ali. Tea Time with Ali. I don't really know. I don't really know what to call this series, but basically, I just thought I'd hang out and just answer some questions, have a general chat, whatever you guys want to do, really. Whatever you guys want to do. So if anyone has any questions, leave them in the chat. Otherwise, we'll just have a generic chit chat. So yeah. Oh, people are responding in the chat. This is wonderful. This is fun. You know what? Let's try and make this normal latency, low latency. I don't know. Who really knows? You look super good. Oh, thanks, man. This is a Q&A. Yeah. Someone. Whoa. The chat is popping off. Damn. Okay, loads of people are saying hello. Loads of people are saying hi. Welcome, everyone. Okay. Hard to... Hang on. Maybe I need to turn on slow mode on here. Let's turn on... How the hell do I... No, go away. Edit. Whoa. Chat is going way too fast. I don't understand. I don't understand what's going on. My god. Right. How do I turn on slow mode on this thing? Live chat. My whole computer's slowing down now. There we go. There we go. Is it peppermint tea? Yes, it's peppermint tea. Okay, right. I'm going to start scrolling through the chat and we'll just look at what the questions are saying. Oh my goodness, they're just moving too fast. Right, let's have a look. Let's pop out the chat. Pop out. Good, I can look at it now. And okay, right. All right, here we go. Here we go. We've got a question from Carlin, which says, bro, can you tell me how to motivate myself when I feel down? Well, Carlin, the thing with motivation, right, is that it just sort of depends on what you're trying to get done. I just so happen to have this book right on my desk, The Motivation Myth. You should read this. This is a very good book by Jeff Hayden. He talks about how motivation is a myth, and the sort of false image we all have of motivation is that we need motivation to then do something. Like motivation is the prerequisite to action. But what our friend Jeff says in the motivation myth is that no, that's not how motivation works. If you feel like you lack motivation, it's because you're not taking action. We start off with action, and then when we get a small success, then that leads to motivation. So action comes first, motivation comes second. So if the question is, I don't have how do I motivate myself to do something? The answer is you do the thing, and then naturally you'll become motivated to do more of the thing. That's just it. Like as soon as this is like a paradigm shifting thing. Like genuinely, as soon as that becomes your way of thinking about motivation, then it just removes the word motivation from your vocabulary because you're like, cool, I don't feel like doing something. That's fine. I don't care if I don't feel like doing something. I'm going to do it anyway, and then I will start feeling like doing it once I start doing it. It's sort of like there's a quote that I like, which is that an Olympian doesn't wait to get into form before training. The Olympian or the Olympic athlete trains to get into form. You don't wait to get into form before training. You train to get into form. So that is just how you think about motivation. It's just got to be done. Okay, right. What else have we got? Hey Ali, I struggle to be consistent when reaching my goals. What's your advice on staying consistent? So yeah, obviously I'm a big believer in consistency as being one of the greatest superpowers in the world, apart from China. And honestly, if you can be consistent at something, then there is absolutely no way you're not going to succeed at that thing, like whatever your definition of success is. And so my view on consistency is that there's a few things that help. Firstly, if you make it not an option. For example, for me to send my weekly email newsletters, it's just not an option. It's just something that I have to get done. For me to go to work in the mornings is not optional. Like, I don't struggle with consistency when going to work in the mornings because it's just not it wouldn't even cross my mind that it's an option to not go to work. And so all of the things that we struggle with in terms of consistency, we're struggling with them because we're giving ourselves the option. There's that line from Harry Potter where Dumbledore says, "Dark and difficult times are coming ahead." Where Dumbledore says, dark and difficult times come ahead, Harry. Soon we must all face the choice between what is right and what is easy." And I think Harry would have been more productive if Dumbledore had said, "Soon we must all remove the choice between what is right and what is easy and what is easy." Like, it's the fact that choice exists that makes us be unproductive. It's not an option for me to not go to work. It's not an option for me to not write my weekly email newsletter, except for 1 week where I didn't bother with it, but that's fine. That's another story. So whatever you're struggling with in terms of consistency, just remove the optionality and then life becomes better. Okay, we got some more questions. We got bear questions. What are the things on your bucket list? You know what? I'll read out the things on my bucket list. Where's my bucket list? I think it's in... It's in Notion and in Todoist. Bucket list. Right, number 1, learn performance hypnosis. Number 2, become a Gymshark athlete. Number 3, busk on the London Underground. Get good at concept art. Learn snowboarding. Learn music production. Perform a parlor magic show. Host a low optionality social retreat with strangers. Host a study retreat with strangers. Learn archery. Release an album of original songs. Hang out with fans in another country. Write a book. Learn how to dance. Get married. Have a kid. Not necessarily in that order. Launch stationery brand. Learn perfect pitch. Write a book on a cruise. Become a black belt in a cool martial art. And learn sword fighting. That is currently what is on my bucket list. Alrighty, loads of questions. Let's look at some of the recent ones. Okay, so from Selena Liu, we have the question, Ali, I'm someone with a lot of ideas and I want to do a lot of things. How do you choose what to focus on in every season of your life? How do you choose what to focus on? I actually have some notes about this. I'm going to consult my second brain because I think this is a very good question. Like, how do we decide what to do with our time? There's a few different ways of answering this. One way of answering it is by thinking about what are the 4 important things in life. Those 4 important things in life are, firstly, physical health. Secondly, mental health / well-being / happiness. It all comes under that bucket. Thirdly, love / relationships. All comes under a bucket. And fourthly, kind of money, material things, sort of the stuff that we need to survive is kind of point number 4. And so when I'm trying to figure out what to do with my life, I'm thinking, okay, I want to find stuff that ideally hits many, many, many of those things, because ultimately that's the sort of life that I'm optimizing for. The other thing I have on this is when you're deciding what to do with your time, one way of doing it is kind of do what you find yourself doing effortlessly. So for example, when I was in school, I'd get home from work in the evenings, and apart from playing World of Warcraft and watching random TV shows like The Vampire Diaries, I would do some programming. I would kind of do some coding. I'd design some websites and stuff. Like, that was the stuff that I was doing effortlessly. And so it made sense to focus my efforts on the stuff that wasn't hard for me to do. If at the time I had said to myself, you know what, I'm 17 years old, it's really important for me to get really hench, and therefore I should go to the gym every other day, that would have been a lot harder because it's not something I was doing effortlessly anyway. And so if we're asking the question, what is the thing to focus on? That's one way of answering that. Like, what are the things we're doing with our time anyway? And is there any way that we can kind of focus on those, get better at those, you know, in service of the ultimate goal, which is happiness and meaning, which is some combination of material things, love, relationships, physical health, and mental health, well-being, and happiness. So I hope that kind of vaguely answers the question. Focus on what you find yourself doing effortlessly. Right, more questions. More questions, as they say. What do we got? So, man, this chat is way too much to keep up with, but that's fine. Okay. Okay, we've got a question from Smoker X, which is, Ali, how many hours should someone study to get perfect marks? Smoker X, mate. This is a question that a lot of people ask. Like, how much time do I need to put in to get a certain output or to get a certain outcome? And it is always the wrong question to be asking. Like, firstly, the correct answer to that question is it depends. It depends on a million different factors. It depends on how intelligent you are. It depends on how hard you're working. It depends on how smart you're working. It depends on what the environment is. It depends on what grade you're trying to go for. It depends on what the exams are structured like. It depends on like a zillion different things. So there is no way to answer the question of how much time should I spend doing this thing. The actual way to answer that is to not think about how much time you're spending at all. It's instead to think about, right, what is my outcome here? How can I break that goal into sort of manageable chunks? And then how can I most efficiently tackle these chunks so that I start off sort of doing the broad brush strokes, getting the big picture, and then I can focus on the details later. There's a famous psychology study where they get people to memorize an image that has lots of complex details on it. And then, after a few minutes of looking at the image, they have to try and recreate the image from memory. And it's interesting what happens when you show this to children and when you show it to adults. When you show it to children, they recreate the image as best they can, but they do it in a sort of piecemeal section. Like they'll start off in the top corner and then move along and then move along and move along. So, and if you stop the kid halfway through, you will get a half-finished image. Like it will literally stop halfway through the page because the kid is viewing it as one bit at a time. But when you give this exercise to adults, usually what they do is they fill in the big picture first and then they fill in the details second. And so when we're looking at studying for an exam or learning any skill at all, we want to start by filling in the big picture and then focusing on the details second. And so the way that I do this is that in every study session, I'm asking myself, if the exam were tomorrow, what topic would I be most pissed off about? Like what topic would I be most bad at? And then I tackle that topic. And so that gives me a very broad kind of general understanding of what's going on. And I worry about the details later. And so that comes around to this thing of how much time does it take? Like, who cares how much time it takes? It's not about the time. It's about covering as much of the content as possible to try and optimize for the goal that we've set for ourselves. So anytime you find yourself asking the question, how much time will this take really? Recognize that it's probably the suboptimal question to be asking. All right, what is next? Tips for getting work done when you're tired from LK. All right, L. Just gonna get rid of my peppermint tea bag. Chuck that in the bin. Tips for getting work done when you're tired. Like, honestly, why would you want to do work when you're tired? Like, sometimes you have to do work when you're tired. Like, if it's not an option, let's say I'm at work and my shift finishes at 5 p.m. and I'm tired at 1 p.m., but I've got all this long list of patients that I have to see and stuff that I have to do. At that point, it's not an option. I have to drink a cup of coffee and I have to battle through it because, and usually what I find is when I throw myself into my work, the tiredness disappears. Like when we're doing something that requires our focus, when we're doing the deep work, when we're in the flow state, we actually don't really feel tired very much. And so usually when we're feeling tired is when we're having that like, oh, it's after lunch. I know I have to sit down to do my work or to write this essay or whatever, but I really can't be bothered. Oh, I'm really tired. Now I'm struggling. That is not a problem with tiredness. It's a problem with getting started. And so what I like to think about is Newton's first law of motion, which is that an object at rest remains at rest, and an object traveling at a constant velocity will continue to travel at that constant velocity unless either are acted on by an external imbalanced force. And so if we are sitting on the sofa doing absolutely nothing and thinking, I'm tired, we're going to continue to stay in that state. But if we're in the process, in the middle of doing something, like I was pretty tired before filming this Q&A, but I was like, you know what, I'm going to start filming this Q&A, and now I'm in the zone. I've got my preacher gene out. I'm, I'm giving my sermon to the camera, and so the tiredness has kind of disappeared. And so when it comes to how do we make ourselves do work when we're tired, number one is that really the trick is just to get started, because once we get started, then the momentum will carry us forward. But otherwise, it again comes back to this idea of removing the optionality. If we can make it not an option to do the work, then suddenly it's going to be a lot easier for us. Like when I'm at work, I was tired earlier today, but that didn't stop me from doing the work. Alrighty. Um, looking for what A levels did you take? Biology, chemistry, maths, physics, and I did English literature or AS. What did you do with Molly's room? Has she moved out? Yes, she's moved out. I'm in the process of converting her room into a filming studio. Ali, can you make a video about Notion for beginners? I've got like 5 of those videos on my channel. Okay, the chat is going by way too fast. Need to pause it. Why are you single? Multifactorial. How to write scripts easily? What is a script? How often are you planning to do these live streams? Hopefully once a week, and much more often on Twitch. So follow me on Twitch, link in the video description. Any tips to read faster? Oh, this is interesting. We've got a video coming up in the very near future about how to read faster. Reading faster is a skill like every other skill, and it can be developed. And so the first thing to do is Google how to read faster, how to speed read, and you'll find a good article on Tim Ferriss's website that gives some of the details about this, and you'll find a load of information. The first thing you want to do is you actually want to test your reading speed, so you have a baseline to start off with, and then you can start doing different things to speed up your reading. One of the things that you can do is you can eliminate sub-vocalization. Sub-vocalization is this thing that we all do, at least like when we're beginners at reading, is that as we're reading, we are there is a voice in our head that is reading as we go along. Then my wife finally said, I know you're rationalizing that you don't need a colonoscopy, but you're being selfish. There's me, there are our kids, and you now have a grandson. Lots of people want you to be around for a long time. Like, as I'm reading that, if I'm reading it silently, there might be a voice in my head that's reading as I go along. We don't need that voice in our heads. And the biggest kind of hack to reading faster is by eliminating that voice and just being okay with the idea of our eyes just scanning the words and trusting that we're actually going to take it in, because we take in information through our eyes a lot quicker than that voice can keep up with. And so you can actually read a lot faster than you can speak or that you can listen to, because you don't need to hear that voice. So step 1, eliminate subvocalization. A few other things you can do is you can create fixation points on different parts of the line. So most of us will read kind of moving along one line, another line, another line, another line. But actually, if you look at people who speed read, they tend to, like, our eyes move in saccades. Like, our eyes don't really move in like smooth pursuit. The only way our eyes can smooth pursuit something is if it's moving. Like if you watch my eyes, they're moving very, very smoothly because I'm tracking an object. Whereas if I try and fake that motion, I'm now going to try and fake the motion of my eyes moving smoothly. And you will notice that it's literally impossible to fake that motion. Instead, our eyes are flick one to the other, to the other, to the other. And so when it comes to reading, we read we naturally read as if we're doing smooth pursuit, like line by line. But actually what our eyes are doing is that they're doing these saccadic movements. And so if we can train our eyes to kind of, let's say, get a random page of this book. Let's say this is the random page of the book. The smooth pursuit version, oh God, I need to be able to see myself. The smooth pursuit version of events would be our eye moving from there to there to there to there. This is not working. I need to see what I'm doing. Right. Let's do it with the front cover of this book. This is important stuff. When we read slowly, our eyes are moving like this. At least we think our eyes are moving like this, but they're actually not. They're moving more like this because they're like saccadic motions, because we know that our eyes are not allowed to move smoothly unless they're following something. So the way to speed read then is to start like over here, like a few words from the start, because you don't actually need to start at that line, because then you're wasting this peripheral space in your eyes. You start here, then you move to the middle, and then you move to the end, and then you go here, middle, end, here, middle, end, here, middle, end. So for each line, you're only doing 3 saccades, or 2 saccades, like kind of left, middle, right, left, middle, right, left, middle, right. And if you do that and you practice it very quickly, you can suddenly read a lot faster, because now your eyes aren't doing these like 18 saccades per line. They're doing like these 2 saccades per line to go left, middle, right, left, middle, right. So those 2 things, subvocalization and sort of having fixation points on the page, are the actual ways on how to read faster. And we've got a video about this coming up shortly, but there's loads of like resources available on Google about how to do this. Okay. What's next? What do you think about Remnote? Haven't used it yet. What do you prefer, Roam or Notion? I use them both. How old are you? I'm 26. Right, we've got a question here. How do you plan on becoming a Gymshark athlete? So I've had this thing on my bucket list for the last like 2 years that I want to become a Gymshark athlete. And it's kind of a ridiculous idea because obviously I don't look like a Gymshark athlete. But it's one of those things where I feel like it actually would be possible, and just having that kind of slightly weird, slightly obscure goal motivates me, even though motivation is a myth. It motivates me to do things like eat healthily and go to the gym, because in my head, I'm sort of playing a game with myself. And the game that I'm playing with myself is one day I'm going to be a Gymshark athlete. And so step one is that, I need to eat more healthy and get more fit. But also, like, Gymshark as a brand, they're keen on the social media stuff. They're keen on attracting kind of a diverse range of athletes. It's not just your stereotypical kind of ripped white dude. They have like a huge variety in their lineup. And so I think, if I think about this strategically, I feel like if I mention the fact that I want to be a Gymshark athlete and kind of work towards it, and then make a few videos about health and fitness and stuff, one day I hope they'll come knocking, or they'll drop me a DM and stuff. It's just one of those things. It's sort of like Matt Diavella when he was running his podcast. Matt Diavella, big YouTuber, you probably know of him. He had this lofty goal to get The Rock on his podcast, and he like really went ham with this. He created a website, gettherockonmattspodcast.com. He got people to create a jingle for it, like Get the Rock on Matt's podcast, like a jingle for it. He even had a competition to get people to write the jingle for Get the Rock on Matt's podcast. And even though he hasn't yet gotten The Rock on his podcast, he's had a few interactions with The Rock, i.e. Dwayne Johnson. The guys retweeted him. The guys replied to his tweets a few times. And it's just a kind of funny thing. It was like a thing that sort of molded his community together in a way that, guys, we're trying to get The Rock on Matt's podcast. And it's one of those sort of ridiculous goals that, like, getting The Rock on Matt's podcast actually, at the end of the day, doesn't actually matter. But the process of trying to get there is just inherently fun and inherently interesting and kind of funny. And so whether or not I become a Gymshark athlete or not, it's just kind of a funny thing, and it means that I'm more likely to, work out and go to the gym a bit more. And now people who follow me know that I've got this journey of trying to become a Gymshark athlete. So it's just like, yeah, as Miley Cyrus says, ain't about how fast I get there, ain't about what's waiting on the other side. It's the climb. And as Brandon Sanderson says in the Stormlight Archive, one of the ideals of the Knights Radiant is life before death, strength before weakness, journey before destination. And so when it comes to a goal of, I want to become a Gymshark athlete, it's actually a lot more about the journey and a lot less about the destination. So that's kind of how I think about that. So Ben, if you're watching this video, I want to be a Gymshark athlete. Guys, please tag Ben Francis and the Gymshark team down below. Yeah. Right. That was pretty good advice, I thought. That's some good stuff. I love busting out a cheeky Miley Cyrus line. I need to memorize more of her lyrics, because that's like one of the very few. I mean, apart from It's a Party in the USA, which is not particularly useful. Like, I love the idea of finding these random ass pop songs or random songs that like give an interesting life lesson, and just kind of memorizing them as like, in the immortal words of Jay-Z, mo money, mo problems, or whatever. Oh, we have a super chat. You should read Tafsir Ibn Kathir, 10 volumes abridged. That sounds like a lot. Why should I read them? Would you recommend? Why would you recommend? Is coffee bad for health? I've got a video about this. No, it's basically not. Thoughts on the Cambridgeshire guided busway? Mate, I love it. It's so good. When are you going to start playing WoW? When Shadowlands comes out? All right. What are we saying? What are we saying? How do I get to interview you for my podcast? Jahanzeb Kadir, how do you get to interview me for my podcast? Just send me an email and say I want to interview you on my podcast. Although I have a general rule that I'm not allowed to be one of the first 10 guests on your podcast. You have to have at least 10 episodes out before I will say yes to you, just because most people stop podcasting after 3 episodes, and I kind of don't want to waste my time with someone who's not going to take it seriously, if that makes sense. So I'll be more than happy to be your 11th or onwards guest on your podcast if you just send me an email. I'm coming to Cambridge in September. Will you meet me? Yeah, send me an email, man. I've got a section on my website. This is not hard. Oh, super chat from Prashanth. Will you be making study along videos and tips for the MLE? It would be of great help for the junior residents. Yeah, I'm going to be making study along videos. I probably am not yet qualified to give tips for preparing for the USMLE because I have not yet done the USMLE, but certainly I'll be making study along videos. And that's kind of my plan. Like when I'm studying for it, I'm going to stream it on Twitch. So everyone follow me on Twitch, link in the video description if you care about me live streaming my study sessions. Lol. What's the mug called? This is the Ember mug. It keeps your tea warm while you're drinking it, allegedly. What is it like to not drink in university? Like, it's absolutely fine. At times, I felt a bit left out in that I was less able to connect with people because alcohol was such a social part of the scene. Like, once I found my tribe of the Pakistan society and the Islamic society, then it was pretty chill. But with my non-Muslim friends in my college, I often found that the conversations at dinner time would be like, "Oi, did you see what Josh did in the club last night? He was absolutely wasted, wasn't he?" And kind of that stuff. And that was a whole aspect of the university experience that I was never part of. And so it's difficult to be part of conversations where you're just completely outside of the main thing that's going on. It's like, I've got lots of friends, we all play board games together. And so if we're getting together playing board games or discussing board games, someone who doesn't play board games and hates board games is unlikely to be able to get in with that conversation, other than being like, "Guys, what the hell is this board game?" Which is not really the kind of conversation you want to have. And so that was sort of the effect of not drinking at university. The good thing was I had lots of friends who didn't drink at university. And so once you find your people, then the alcohol thing really doesn't matter. What are we saying? How to do well in GCSEs and A-levels, mate. Active recall, spaced repetition, mark schemes, CGP revision guides. When did you start wearing grey t-shirts and why? So the great thing about grey t-shirts is that they kind of go with everything. And B, when you just have a lot of grey t-shirts, you don't need to worry about what you're wearing each morning. Like at the moment, I'm wearing a grey t-shirt and blue shorts because it's summery. In winter, I'd wear a grey t-shirt and black jeans. I can wear a grey t-shirt and blue jeans. I can wear a grey t-shirt and black, whatever the hell I want, because a grey t-shirt is so versatile. I started wearing them, I think, in my second year of university. From like 2013 onwards, I've just been mostly just been wearing grey t-shirts. Recently, I've started kind of pushing the boat out a little bit and expanding into pink t-shirts very occasionally. But I just always find myself going back to grey. The other nice thing, and this is something that my friends Mark and Steve used to, or rather Mark currently does and Steve used to do, the late Steve before he tragically passed away. When you wear the same thing every day, you then don't have to worry about what you're wearing every day. And so it removes this decision from your life. And I'm very keen on removing as much decision-making from my life as possible, because then I can spend my decision-making brain power on things that actually matter, rather than worrying about, oh crap, what am I going to wear today? So that is the grey t-shirt vibe. Would recommend. Oh, Matey says, how do you learn information in the first place? Do you read it, then you do some questions, or do you read it, then you try to repeat that sentence again? Matey, you've clearly not seen my videos about active recall. I literally have a video called How to Learn New Content. And it talks about how active recall isn't just for revising stuff we already know. Active recall is actually for learning stuff in the first place. Like, in a way, there is no learning without memorization. And so, when we're learning stuff, first of all, we read it, and then we think, okay, does this make sense to me? Could I explain it to a 5-year-old? And if the answer to that question is yes, then we write a question for ourselves and we revisit it at a later date because we still need to be able to memorize that. We want to commit that information to memory. And so, I've got a long Skillshare class about it. It's got like 5 hours worth of content about how to study for exams. You should definitely watch that. It's available for free, link in the video description. Oh, more super chats. Amazing. Carlos. Oh, hey, Carlos. I recognize your name. He says, you should make a video about critical thinking and science behind medicine. Skeptic's Guide to the Universe. All right. Skeptic's Guide to the Universe. That'll be next on my Amazon to buy list. Thank you for that. And we also have Nicholas Weinger, who says, tips on studying in the UK. I live in the US, want to pursue my master's online, of course. Why do you want to do a master's online? It seems like an absolute total 100% waste of money to do a master's online. Like, the point of a university degree is not the degree, it is the experience, it is the hanging out with people, it's the connections that you make, the friends you make along the way. You can learn anything that a master's program is going to teach you just online. So I would highly advise against doing an online master's because, like, come on. Unless you need that qualification to go into something else. Because, the whole point of it, it's the experience. And if you can't be in a university, like, surrounded by people, it just seems like a total waste of money. So what I would recommend is instead, don't worry about, trying to do an online master's at, I don't know, UCL or Cambridge or something, because there's no point. Instead, spend that money, spend that year doing something more interesting, learn more skills, meet new people, whatever you want. And you can always do the master's afterwards, hopefully, when the lockdown situation is eased a little bit. All right. Can you ask Ali to give some thoughts on sperm retention theory? What is sperm retention theory? Oh, I think my mate Nikhil makes some videos about that. I haven't seen any of them yet, but I'll add that to my to-watch list. Would you consider doing podcast live streams? I'd watch every week. We tend to live stream the podcasts when we're doing it remotely, but we tend not to do it when we're doing it physically because it's a lot more effort. How many hours do you spend studying in a day? Oh, God. That is a bad question because the answer is it depends. And the answer is it depends. And when you're asking the question of how many hours do you spend studying in a day, you are looking for a magic bullet. Like, oh, just spend 3 hours studying a day and then you'll be great. That's not how it works. Like, it's a bit more complicated. John says, love from Australia. Thank you, John. Very kind. Can you do an Anki tutorial? Kirill, mate, look in the video description. I have got a 4.5 hour long Skillshare class about how to use Anki. Like, that is all the Anki tutorial that you need. Why is your nose so big? Poor genetics. Favorite video game, World of Warcraft. How do you apply active recall and spaced repetition to technique subjects like physics and chemistry? There is a video on my YouTube channel, which is 5 revision tips with Simon Clark. Simon Clark is an Oxford physics student who then did a PhD at Exeter in physics. He answers this question about what does active recall mean when it comes to studying technique-based subjects. So you should watch that video. What's your SAT score? We don't do SATs in the UK. Ali, the master's degrees thing you said just made no sense. Why can't a person broaden your knowledge with a master's degree while working full time? You're assuming there that the master's degree is actually going to teach you something of value. Most of the things that you can learn in a master's degree, you can learn online by yourself. You don't need to pay lots of money and, do a traditional kind of university degree program to learn the stuff. And so if you're going to be paying all that money anyway, you might as well just invest it in a series of decent online courses. And so kind of doing a master's is fine. But doing a master's online, I mean, I feel like that there are generally more efficient ways to learn things. But hey, ultimately, you do you. I'm just spouting and preaching based on my own experience and what I've seen, which is not extensive by any means. What if we can't afford your Skillshare classes, mate? You can get the free trials, and then you can cancel if you really want to. Oh, this is interesting. Kind of odd. Maybe not overthinking, but what should I do to stop looking like a baller when pulling out all my expensive tech in front of friends? Well, the first question is, do you have that expensive tech because you want to appear like a baller in front of your friends? Or do you not care about that? Like, I think one question to ask ourselves, this was a thought experiment that was proposed by, and I'm blanking on the name of the philosopher, which doesn't sound very intelligent at all. I want to say John Rawls. Maybe it wasn't John Rawls. Who knows? The thought experiment is to imagine that you are the only person left in the world. Everyone else in humanity has been wiped out, hypothetically speaking. Would you still buy the thing that you're going to buy? So for me, would I still buy a fancy MacBook? Yes, I would, because I still want to create content. You know, we're stretching this metaphor a bit. Would I buy a decent mouse or a decent keyboard? Yes, because I enjoy spending time on the computer. Would I buy a designer t-shirt? Probably not. I'd probably buy a very basic t-shirt, because the only value in buying a designer t-shirt is in signaling to other people, potentially in signaling to myself that I'm a certain type of person with a certain identity. But a big part of the clothes we wear is to signal to other people. And so if you're worried about, looking like a twat by busting out your expensive tech in front of your friends, ask yourself, well, what was the real reason you bought the tech? Secondly, recognize that your friends probably don't care. Everyone is worried about their own lives. No one is looking at you. No one's thinking about you. And that is a very liberating thought. Eleanor Roosevelt, for example, is often quoted to have said that we wouldn't worry so much about what others think of us when we realize how seldom they do. No one is thinking about me. No one's thinking about you. This is a thing in psychology called the spotlight effect. This idea we have that we're walking around the world with a spotlight trained on us in everything we do. Anytime I bust out my iPhone 11 Pro Max and do a little flip with it, every time I do that, people are looking at me and thinking, oh, that guy's a baller. He's got an iPhone 11 Pro Max. That is not what's going on. No one cares about me. No one cares about you. They're just trying to get on with their own day, with their own life, trying to make a difference, trying to add meaning, all of that good stuff. Right. That was a good preach session. Oh, $10.99. Super chat. Hey, Ali, would you recommend more or lesser Notion pages for a subject and the topics within? Just categorize and toggle every question on one page so it's easier to overview. What's your advice? Oh, I feel bad that you've paid so much money to ask this question, because the answer really is it depends. It depends whatever works for you. The really nice thing about Notion is that you can start off on one page, and then if you need to turn things into separate pages, you can turn them into separate pages. So the way that I like to do it is I like to have everything on one page. Like if I'm doing, I don't know, vascular pathology, that will be all on one page, and it will just be toggles and headings. But then if I find that, actually vascular pathology is best split up into these 3 different areas, the small, the medium, and the large vessel vasculitides, then if I want to, I can just create new pages for them, and I can just drag and drop into the new pages. So that's one of the things I like about Notion. You don't have to have a top-down approach, like where you've figured out the system in advance. You can figure out the system as you go along, and that makes it a lot easier to kind of move stuff around. And so yeah, Notion is great. Nice one, guys. Oh, another super chat. You use many note-taking apps. Would you use a single app, and how much would you pay for it that would deliver all of the functions that you use? Would I use a single app? I mean, it would be really nice to have a single app that does absolutely everything. And I'd probably pay £50 a month for it. In fact, if there was a single app that does absolutely everything I need it to, I'd probably pay £100 a month for it, just because it would be such a value add to my life. Possibly even more than that. The reason I use so many note-taking apps is because they all kind of do different things. Like, note-taking app is such a broad category that has zillions of apps in it. It is not the case that, I made this video about Rome, and people were like, dude, last week you told me you were using Notion, and this week you're using Rome. You're so promiscuous. You're a big slut. Like, whatever. I shouldn't say that word. But it's like, if you're a professional carpenter, do you just have one screwdriver in your toolbox? No, you don't. You've got like 8 different screwdrivers, each with different bits on them, each that serve a slightly different purpose. Some of those screwdrivers, the bog standard Phillips screwdriver or the bog standard kind of flat screwdriver, you're going to use all the time because those are the very basics. But very occasionally, you need to open up your iPhone, and so you need one of those like triangular screwdrivers. Like very occasionally, you need to open up like a piece of furniture, so you need an Allen key. Like you've got these different tools for different purposes. And so for me, the note-taking apps that I use now most often are Notion and Roam. But still, I use Evernote for some stuff. I use it as a filing cabinet. Occasionally, I use Bear. I still use Drafts. I still use Ulysses very occasionally. Like all of these apps serve different purposes. But for the most part, most of my life is now in Notion and in Roam. So it's more like embracing the toolbox rather than worrying about, oh, I'm only allowed to have one note-taking app. It's it's all good. All right. More questions. Someone paid a £1 super chat, Mohsin Salami, but then your message was retracted. Sadly, Roam isn't free anymore. I failed the test and now it has a pricing plan. Yeah, I mean, if you need free software, then don't use Roam. Find the software that's suited to your needs. I must say, you're so hilarious. Oh, thank you so much. That is very kind. Let's see. Any more questions that we've got? Pros and cons of online bachelor. Presuming you mean like bachelor's degree and not being an online bachelor. I consider myself an online bachelor. I think there are lots of pros to the lifestyle. Can you buy me or give me a MacBook, please? Nope. Is there a way to remove the negative emotions that you get from the thought of studying? Oh, that's interesting. Removing negative emotions from the thought of studying. Yes. The way to do that is by making it more pleasant. The reason we have negative emotions at the thought of doing anything, like I occasionally get negative emotions at the thought of going to the gym because I think, oh, it's going to be hard work. Oh, my body's going to hurt. Oh, I can't be bothered. But then the way that I get over that is that I make the experience of going to the gym more fun. So firstly, I'm a member of a fairly fancy gym. And so when I go to the gym, it's just a generally nice, pleasant experience. Yeah, it's exactly the same as going to a cheaper gym, but it's just a bit of a nicer experience. And if I can make my environment a bit nicer, it makes me personally more likely to use the thing. And therefore, I consider it money well invested rather than money wasted. So firstly, making the environment nicer. When it comes to studying, sometimes what I do, I make sure my desk is clean if I'm studying at home. If I'm not studying at home and I want to get out of the house, I go to a coffee shop and I give myself a budget that, I'm allowed to have 3 lattes today. And so it makes it a nice experience when I can kind of sit in a nice coffee shop, put on my headphones, or maybe just kind of absorb the ambient noise and then kind of sip with my pinky sticking out from my latte like a pretentious twat. That's all fine. That will make the experience of studying more pleasant. The other thing that makes it more fun is regarding studying kind of like a game. Like when I'm taking exams, I view it as a game that I'm playing with myself, where I'm in sort of friendly competition with some of my friends who I care about. And so when you view it as a game, then like every new bit of knowledge you learn, every time you do past paper questions, every time you're writing an essay, it's like, oh, this is a game. This is fun. How can I maximize my score on this relatively arbitrary game just because it's fun? And so those are some of the ways in which I personally remove the negative emotion from studying and from the other stuff that I do. Do you have any password manager apps? Yes, I use Dashlane. Sam Cook, thank you for the £1 super chat. Very, very kind. Can you gift me your piano? Nope. What's the deal with people asking for handouts? Dude, come on. Are you in a relationship? Nope. I'm in a relationship with the internet. How do I control my feelings? What the hell does that mean? Using Notability versus Notion. Notability is a glorified piece of paper. It's pretty good for certain uses. Notion is a big content management system. They have very, very different uses. It's like saying, do I need to use my highlighter or do I need to use my pen? Well, I mean, they serve different purposes. That's a good analogy, wasn't it? Came up with that one on the spot. I don't know how he does it. I don't know how he freaking does it. How to get my messy thoughts organized. Videos on that coming mid-August. Are you going to play WoW on your Mac with eGPU? Yes. How do you multitask effectively? Says Tochukwu Agboizi. There is no such thing as multitasking effectively. in the research on the topic of productivity, there's this thing called the attentional deficit. I can't remember what it's called, something like that. Basically, the task switching attention deficit. The idea is that when we switch from one task to another and then back to the first, we're we only have like a limited amount of random access memory in our brains, a limited amount of working memory that can process stuff in the short term. And so if we're constantly switching from one task to another, if we're trying to multitask, what we're actually doing is we are being suboptimal on all of those things. And so there is no way to multitask effectively. What we should do is single-mindedly focus on a single thing, get finished with that, and then move on to something else, because the attentional deficit residue, whatever the hell it's called, is just not worth the cost of trying to multitask. And so if you're trying to multitask, I would say don't focus on kind of single task, flow state, hashtag deep work, all of that good stuff. What is your highest GPA in med school? We don't have GPAs in the UK. It's just not a thing. A lot of these questions can be answered from watching your videos. It's fine. I don't expect anyone to watch all my videos. The way that I think about this actually is that, for example, Tim Ferriss is probably my biggest hero in the world, apart from my mum, of course. And, you know, if I ever met Tim Ferriss, I would be in tears and like thanking him about how much he's changed my life. And even kind of saying this now kind of is making me emotional inside. And yet, the only book of his that I've actually read cover to cover is The 4 Hour Workweek. I've got The 4 Hour Body. I read like 10% of it. I read like 5% of The 4 Hour Chef. I've dabbled a bit in Tools of Titans and Tribe of Mentors. I've only listened to like 2% of his podcast episodes. And yet, even though I have not consumed the vast majority of his content, I would still say Tim Ferriss is the person in the world who's most changed my life, apart from my mum. Thank you, mum, if you're watching this. And so when it comes to like, sometimes when I get kind of bad analytics on my videos, I think, you know what, it's fine. You know, what matters is the number of lives of people that I can hopefully touch in a non-weird way, metaphorically, rather than whether people watch all of my videos, because I really couldn't care less if people watch all of my videos. At least that's the story that I tell myself. More super chats from MMBF3130. I tend to be a bit nervous and negative thought and emotional during an exam. How do you keep yourself calm and stay focused during an exam? Tips, please. This is a hard one. I think a lot of it depends on your own, just like your own personality. Like, I've got some friends who view taking exams as a very, very stressful endeavor. If you watch the Q&A, live stream Q&A that I did with my housemate Molly, now my ex-housemate Molly, she talks about her feeling about exams. And she talks about how anytime she does an exam, she has this firm belief that she's going to fail the exam. And therefore, the act of taking the exam and preparing for it becomes a hugely stressful and anxiety-inducing experience in trying to avoid failure. Whereas for me and some of my other friends, when we take exams, it's like, oh, you know, this is an exam, this is fun. I wonder how well I can do in this exam. The thought that we might fail the exam like hardly even registers. And so when you're in that mode where the exam is a game, the exam is fun, you're having a friendly competition with your mates to see who can get the highest score, there's no anxiety associated with that. But if you're in the mode of, oh crap, I'm going to fail this exam unless I work really hard for it, blah, 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 even though the end result might be the same, and Molly does amazingly well in all her exams, far better than I do, the end result might be the same, but she prepares for an exams by causing anxiety, herself anxiety and stress. And, you know, I'm a bit more arrogant about it. So, you know, that would be my advice on how to be less stressed about exams. Try and get more into the mindset of this is a game, this is fun, rather than thinking, oh, crap, you know, my whole identity is tied up in this thing. But hey, you do you, whatever works. If it works for you and you're happy with it, then it's fine, keep going. There's nothing I should say that should make any difference. All right, another super chat from Tamur Ali, interesting. Is YouTube a crutch to a dimension of your life you don't cover on YouTube? Do you consider the impact of your content on young minds greater than success, greater than ego? I'm not sure what you mean. Is YouTube a crutch to a dimension of your life you don't cover on YouTube? If you can possibly refine that, because I'm really not sure what you're talking about, but I'll be more than happy to answer it if you want to post it in the chat. WJ Hunter, thanks for answering my eGPU question. You're very welcome. Following up, having WoW as an available option will decrease productivity overall, deciding for my PhD. Yeah, it probably would decrease your productivity overall, but hey, life is not about productivity. I'm planning to get back into WoW when Shadowlands comes out in November. I really look forward to joining like a raiding guild and taking it seriously, because for the first time, I won't have a job, I won't have a university degree to do, and I won't have my mum calling me down for dinner every night and being like, Mum, I'm in the middle of a 25-man raid, I can't pause the game. Ali, come down for dinner right now. You know, that was like the biggest anxiety-inducing events in my childhood, which goes to show that I had a pretty sheltered childhood. Thanks, Mum, on that front. But yeah, WoW, playing World of Warcraft, playing video games will probably decrease your overall kind of output slightly. But, you know, I did a video recently about why video games are good for us. There is some evidence that playing video games actually improves our memory and our attentional, our capacity to focus our attention in different ways. It's just kind of fun. You know, life doesn't need to be productive all the time. Or so people tell me. Alrighty. Something smells very weird. I think someone's having a barbecue outside. Cheeky Barbie. Oh, here we go. Marcus Villena says, tips to promote study methods, Anki, active recall, etc. to peers, hoping to write workshops. Yeah, the way to promote anything really is to just kind of do it for free. The way that I started promoting active recall is that I did a talk for the Islamic Society when I was in my third year of medical school called How to Revise for Exams, a scientific approach or something like that. And like a few hundred people attended that talk, and it was really widely shared on Facebook because I was offering for free this lecture about the evidence-based like study techniques. So if you want to promote these study techniques, one way of doing them is just by hosting a random seminar at your school or university, and people will just turn up to it. The other way of promoting these is by, for example, by making videos about it or just telling your friends. Like most people that I know who started using Anki because other people were using Anki. And when you see someone doing the flashcards, you think, whoa, that app looks really cool. What's going on there? And they're like, oh, this is Anki. You should try it. It's amazing. So even just sort of the word of mouth aspect of promoting certain study techniques to your friends will work. And then, of course, there is the idea of that if you do really well in your exams, people will ask you, hey, dude, how did you do so well in your exams? And your answer will be like, oh, mate, literally all you need is this app called Anki. It will change your life. And then they're more likely to download Anki. So that would be how I'd recommend sharing your study techniques with your friends. All right, we have another super chat. Have you ever met someone who's both a doctor and a dentist? Yes, I have, many times. Many times. There is a specialty in surgery called maxillofacial surgery, where you have to be a doctor and you have to be a dentist. So one of my friends, his name is Shadi, he started off doing dentistry, and then he did medicine, so that he can become a maxillofacial surgeon. Equally, I've got a few friends who did medicine first, and then instead of becoming doctors at the end of it, they got their medical degree, so they're officially doctors, but they haven't worked as doctors. Instead, they went straight into dental school to do a 3-year accelerated program to also become dentists, so that they could ultimately become max-fac surgeons. I was even vaguely toying with the idea just because the thought of spending an extra 3 years at university seemed really fun, but I decided against it in the end. Pavel Kutov says, do you feel well in all the restrictions that you created for yourself, clothes, money, etc.? I feel like I haven't really created many restrictions for myself. Like, yeah. So I feel completely fine with the restrictions that I have because I don't see them as restrictions at all. We have another super chat. Tips to stop procrastinating over a major, possibly life-changing presentation. P.S. It's this Sunday. Wish me luck. Oh, Jassim, mate. Good luck with your presentation. You should watch Tim Urban's absolutely incredible TED Talk called Inside the Mind of a Master Procrastinator. It is absolutely amazing. It's one of the most... It's just one of the best TED Talks I've ever seen. One of the best videos I've ever seen, period. The way... I'm going to give you some spoilers. What he explains is this idea that within our brains, we have the instant gratification monkey, which wants us to do instant gratification things. And then we have like the adult inside of, like, I can't remember what he calls it, but we've got like the rational adult. And the rational adult wants us to prepare for the presentation. But the instant gratification monkey is kind of diverting us off course. And so stopping us from preparing that presentation. The only thing that the instant gratification monkey is afraid of is the panic monster. And the panic monster is who comes along the night before a deadline where you have no choice other than to do the thing. And so panic monster scares away the instant gratification monkey, and then our rational actor can actually do the thing that we want to do. And it's a really, really good TED Talk. I really haven't done it justice at all. You need to watch it. If you're watching this on Instagram afterwards, I'll put a link in the video description. You should check it out. Sebastian Tello, is being in a relationship something you want or something to satisfy family? You seem too independent to want to invest in a relationships / are hard. Thank you for the question, Sebastian. Thank you for the super chat. Yes, I would like to be in a relationship. It would be nice. I don't miss not being in a relationship, but it would be nice. It'd be nice to have someone to share a life with and all that kind of stuff. And I think I would be willing to invest in it if I found someone or if I met someone who I thought was worth investing in and who kind of feels the same way about me. So yeah, it'd be nice. Got some more super chats. This is sick. System to stop false positives. For example, with flashcards, looking at answers before and answering and convincing yourself, oh, I definitely knew that. Yeah, so Emily Hill. That's a nice thing about stuff like Anki, where you're not allowed to look at the answer until you've done it. And so, it's just kind of cheating if you look at the answer and tell them, oh yeah, I definitely knew that. You have to generate the answer yourself. So I think the question you're really asking is, how do I not cheat when I'm testing myself? The answer is you just choose not to cheat because it's it's not the right thing to do, and it's objectively bad for you in the long run. But yeah, no, I get the temptation is often there to think, oh, you know what? I'll just look at the answer. Oh yeah, I definitely knew that the CFTR gene was on chromosome 7. Oh yeah, I've come across that before. But there's like two different types of memory. There is, what's it called? There's recognition memory, and then there is like generative memory. Generative memory is when you say, what's the capital of, I don't know, France, and you know Paris is the capital of France. Recognition memory is where where the question is, what's the capital of France? And you see London, Paris, Madrid, Vienna, and you think, oh, it's Paris. That's recognition memory. It's a different sort of memory than generative memory. I think that's a term for it. And so, when you're doing flashcards, you want to focus on building up the generative memory rather than building up recognition memory. But it kind of depends on what you're optimizing for, what your exams are structured, how you want to learn, all that sort of stuff. All right, we have another super chat from Christina, who says, I'm 38, a PA student, and I find myself distracted by my kids' life. How strict are you with your routine and your to-do list? How do you keep them from derailing? Thank you for the super chat. Thank you for the question, Christina. Honestly, I can't relate to finding myself distracted by my kids or my life. But to be honest, it's fine. Like, when you're on your deathbed, you're unlikely to think, damn, I wish I'd read a few more books. You're unlikely to think, damn, I wish I'd worked a bit harder. You are likely to think, damn, I wish I'd actually spent a bit more time with my kids when they were growing up. At least that's what people say if you read books like The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying and stuff like that. So for me, when it comes to priorities, I like to keep in mind that relationships are the most important thing in life, with mental health, physical health, and sort of satisfying the material requirements of life, sort of a little bit below that. And given that relationships are the most important thing in life, if, for example, a friend messages me and says, hey, I'm coming to visit Cambridge, do you want to grab dinner? And I'm thinking, oh, well, I should probably do this video instead. Unless it's an absolute requirement, unless it's like my dissertation that needs handing in tomorrow, I will generally prioritize hanging out with the friend, because the video can always wait. But hanging out with a friend, that's really what life is all about. So honestly, I wouldn't really worry about being distracted by your kids. That's the whole point, and I say this as a 26-year-old with no kids, but you're probably going to look back at that time and think, I'm glad I was distracted by my kids. Like, I used to spend my university years with the door wide open, propped open with a doorstop. And I used to get distracted by my friends. But I don't look back at my university experience and think, damn, I wish I'd had a few less chats with my friends, and I wish I'd been 2% more productive when working. I look back at the time and think, you know what? I'm really glad I had an open door policy in my room. I'm really glad people felt comfortable enough to come into my room and just hang out, and that created so many friendships and opportunities and relationships and stuff. So that's what life's about, really. Louis Chamberlain, any tips on building lean muscle? Oh, I'm very glad you're asking me that question, because what the hell do I know? But I'll refer you to someone who does know. Go to the website julian.com. This is a dude called Julian Shapiro who runs some tech company or something in America, I assume. But he's got this amazing website, and on his amazing website, he's got the ultimate guide to building muscle. And it's a very well written, very well structured, very well researched, allegedly scientifically accurate guide to building muscle. And I've been following his Julian method for the last year or so. Not a year, for the last 6 months or so. And it's the method of working out that I've most stuck to of any other method that I've tried. So julian.com, check out his method for building muscle if you want to learn how to build lean muscle. Oh, we have another super chat. Lucy M, CHF. Czech franc? No, that wouldn't be CH. Who knows? What are your dream travel destinations? Also, what are your thoughts about digital nomads? Could you imagine living this lifestyle yourself? Dream travel destinations. I don't really have any dream travel destinations. There's a few places, it'd be nice to visit Hong Kong. It'd be nice to go to Australia, New Zealand. It'd be nice to go to South America. But those are fairly kind of vague. I don't really have any dream destinations as such where I think, oh, I'd really love to visit this place. But then I don't really feel very strong emotions about anything generally. When it comes to the digital nomad lifestyle, it's something that, yeah, I mean, that is a big part of why I'm taking a break from medicine for the short term, because I want to try and live the digital nomad lifestyle where you're kind of working from a laptop, you're taking your cameras around, you're traveling the world, you're doing your thing, you're making money on the side. I sort of did a little bit of that in my 5th year of medical school when me and some friends, we all went on our electives, and our elective is when you can go anywhere in the world and do some medical stuff. So when we were in Cambodia and Vietnam, on the weekends and stuff, or sometimes we'd even take days off the actual placement, we'd go into town, we'd find some random hotel that had like a nice swimming pool and a nice beachside area for like $2 for the day, and we just kind of chill there. And I was doing some web design stuff on my laptop. I was working for this company, and I was making £100 an hour, doing some like freelance graphic like web design services from my laptop. And it was a cool kind of lifestyle where it was like, damn, the last hour I've made £100 tapping away on my laptop, and staying in this hotel for a whole day with like loads of food and loads of drink and a swimming pool is costing me like £5 for the day. So it's like such a huge differential in terms of how far your money goes in certain countries versus in other countries. And so that kind of lifestyle seemed kind of cool, and so I definitely want to try it out for a bit longer just to see if it's fun. A lot of people say that once you've done it for a while, it starts to get old, and then you start to want to build roots and invest in things, and that makes a lot of sense. But I haven't really tried the sort of nomadic, digital free sort of lifestyle yet, and so I want to try it out just to see what it's like. And then probably I'll go down the path of everyone else and think, you know what, actually, having a wife and kids and a stable job is the way forward. But we'll see. All right. Oh, damn. My throat is starting to get... All right. Looking up. What is your view on the Kashmir issue? I don't know, man. I don't know much about the Kashmir issue. But I've always wanted to visit India. Let's just say that. Am I right? I used to make that joke when traveling around with my family in Pakistan. Anytime Kashmir would come up, I'd be like, oh, I've always wanted to visit India. People would be like, what? And I was like, guys, it's banter. How to find my niche when writing online. How do you find your niche when writing online? I mean, I guess the starting point to finding your niche in anything is start with the things that you're most interested in. Like, what do you find yourself gravitating towards? What are the things you enjoy reading about? And therefore, what are the things you might enjoy writing about? Like, for me, when I was like 16, 17, I used to read a lot of self-help, pop philosophy, pop psychology type stuff. And so I always kind of thought that, one day I'd like to write articles, sort of self-help philosophy articles about how one can live a better life. And that was just kind of a vague idea. And a few years later, I found the domain everydaythinking.com available on some like domain reselling website. And I was thinking, everydaythinking.com, that would be a good name for a website or a blog where I share articles about everyday thinking, the philosophy of everyday life. And I thought that would be like a cool thing. And so those were the sorts of articles that I started writing. It's not much of a niche because it's like very, very broad, and you probably want to kind of niche down a bit more. But the first step is to figure out what you're interested in, what you're naturally inquisitive about, what is less effort for you to do. And then as you're writing about it, your interests will develop, and then you'll find your niche and you'll do your stuff. You should also check out David Perel's Ultimate Guide to Writing Online. You should check out his online course, The Rite of Passage. It's very expensive, but there's also lots of blog posts on his website and on his Twitter where he gives more writing advice. So check that out. That's a good resource. Robbie, you should add Steal the Show by Michael Port to your reading list. It's great for public speaking, interviews, and acting. Thank you, Robbie. I'm buying it on Amazon right now. Steal the Show. All right. And Kindle edition. Or should I get the audiobook? I think the audiobook would be good. I'm going to get the audiobook. I just need to log in. Oh, God. logged into Vivaldi. I was trying out the Vivaldi browser, but I'm not like logged into my... I have just bought it on Audible. Thank you very much, Robbie, for the recommendation. I will let you know how it goes. Okay. What else are people saying? How to become a doctor. Apply to med school. And if you get in, you'll become a doctor. Any update on the thumbnails? Vishnu. Oh yeah, I saw your email. I think for now we're not looking for someone to help with the thumbnails, but I appreciate the effort you've put in. I liked your America one. But for now, I don't think we're looking for anyone because we've got an in-house team of like 3 people. Mohammed says, how to learn any content in order to apply active recall when studying for exams. Mohammed, I'm going to link to Ali Abdal, learn new content. I have a video about this. I'm linking you the video about this in the chat. Here we go. You're a painting. Thank you, Monica Moon. That is very kind of you. Very kind of you to say. How do you find great small YouTubers with great content? I don't know. Search. Follow people on Twitter. Passive income ideas for someone in PK, presumably Pakistan. Look, this whole passive income thing is a myth. There's no such thing as passive income. The way you make passive income is by providing lots of value to the world over a very long period of time and then monetizing it later. So everyone from Pakistan and from India who's emailed me over the last few weeks saying that, bro, please offer me some advice on how I can easily make passive income, you're all missing the point. It's not just Pakistan and India, but, you know, for some reason, when people email from Pakistan and India, they often say I'm emailing from Pakistan and India, be like, you know, hi sir, I'm Hamza from Pakistan. Be like, cool, nice to meet you, Hamza from Pakistan. Mostly when people email from other parts of the world, they tend not to say where they're from. And so I always have Pakistan and India in my head. It's like, oh, you know, these people are actively flagging out where they're from. Anyway, everyone who's emailed me in the last few weeks, and there've been like at least 100 emails, people being like, what's the easiest way to make money online? There is no easy way to make money online. The easy way is the hard way. And the hard way is, there's a 3-step process. Basically, you've got to build an audience. And the way you build an audience is, number 1, you create valuable content. Number 2, you share it online for free. And number 3, you do that every week for 2 years. If you do those 3 things, you are almost guaranteed to build a decent audience, and then you can 100% monetize that audience to make passive income further down the line. Step 1, create valuable content. Step 2, put it online for free. And step 3, do this once a week for 2 years, and I guarantee you'll be successful, whatever your definition of success looks like. If you don't want to do that, if you want to find some snake oil to sell, then, I don't know, read the 4-Hour Workweek. Zinger. Am I right? Oh. Super chats. How to prioritize goals and not second guess later. It's totally fine to second guess your goals. Like, there is no value in sticking to a vision that you once had at one point in time. This is something I often get into. I say arguments. It's not really arguments. I often get into debates with my mum about. Like, my mum often says, look, Ali, you're the one who made the decision to study medicine. Why are you not taking medicine so seriously? And what I say is, look, when I was 16, I made the decision to study medicine. Now my circumstances have changed a little bit. I still like medicine, but I certainly don't like it enough to make it the only thing that I do full time. In fairness, that's not what my mum's saying, but, you know, I'm just exaggerating to make the point. There is no virtue, there's no, I don't know, kudos in holding to this decision that I made when I was 16. It would be like saying, you know, when I was 16, I used to wear oversized Gap hoodies. I'd be like, oh, Ali, you know, stay true to yourself. Continue to wear oversized Gap hoodies when you're 26 years old. It's like, I probably won't do that. Equally, you know, a goal that I set for myself when I was 16 does not have to be the goal that I'm following today. And so when you're asking the question, how do you prioritize goals and not second guess later? It's fine. It's totally fine to second guess your goals and to decide, is this really what I want to do? There's a great analogy that I like when it comes to board games. I'm going to go off on a bit of a tangent here, but there is a point. And that is that when we're playing kind of proper board games, and by proper I mean like the Euro games variety, when you're playing a proper board game, often there are multiple victory conditions. There is, you know, let's say you're playing a board game that involves, you've got some resources and you're building a farm and you're building a family and you're making some food and you're making some wood, whatever you want. One way to win the board game might be to have the biggest family at the end of it. One way to win the board game might be to have the greatest number of resources. One way to win the board game might be to have the biggest army. One way might be to have the most culture points in through the ages or whatever. But the point is that at the start of the board game, depending on how the dice fall or whatever, you might think to yourself, okay, my strategy for this board game is going to be to build the biggest army because already I've got a few advantages. I've got the right cards in my hand that can help me build the biggest army. And so you start out pursuing that strategy. But then halfway through the game, as the conditions change, you should constantly be asking yourself, like, what are the victory conditions? And reconsidering whether building your biggest army is actually the victory condition you want to go for. You might find that as you're working towards building the biggest army, one of your opponents has so many better cards for him to get a bigger army. Or you might find you've stumbled into this thing that lets you actually raise more sheep and then you can win by having the best agriculture. The point is that as you're going along the board game, you don't just want to be myopically stuck to your vision of, I want to build the biggest army. You want to reconsider the victory conditions at every point, every time you get new information and think, is this still the strategy that I want to pursue? And so coming back round to real life, when it comes to real life, we don't just want to be short-sightedly, myopically looking at the goal that we set for ourselves 10 years ago and thinking, I must work towards that. We want to take into account our changing circumstances, the changing landscape, the changing world, and think, really, is this the way that I want to go forward? For me personally, a few weeks ago, I made a video about moving to America. And now I'm reconsidering that. And people are like, oh, well, people aren't going to take you seriously if you just keep changing your mind. And my view is like, of course I'm going to keep changing my mind. This is my life we're talking about. If one day my goal is I want to move to America and the next day freaking America shuts down because of coronavirus, it would be utterly silly for me to not reconsider that goal and think, is this still really what I want based on this new information? And so I don't think there's any value in sticking to goals. I think there is value in reconsidering whether those are really the goals that you want to stick to. That's some good advice, isn't it? Oh, I love hearing myself talk. Are you going to do another study session video? Yes, I'm planning to do loads. Basically, from next week, I'm going to be unemployed. And so I'm going to be preparing for the USMLE, despite what I've just said. And so I'm going to be streaming loads of study sessions on Twitch and stuff like that. So follow me on Twitch. Ricardo says, I recently saw your video about video games. How do you balance video games or leisure and the more productive activities? When I play them, I pour into them and become a useless/unproductive blob. Yeah, I think this is just about balance, really. Like, everything in life is good with a bit of balance. For me, I feel like I have trained myself to be focusing on productivity at all costs to the point where I need to actively decide to take time out and do something, like play a video game. Like yesterday, I was at my mum's place in St. Albans and I was playing The Last of Us Part 1. And after like an hour of playing it, I was thinking, this has been fun, but now I feel the itch to do something productive. And so I got up and did something productive. Whereas, when you haven't trained that itch as much, and some people would question what's the value of training that itch, fair enough. When you haven't trained that itch, it becomes more a case of sort of actively setting boundaries on yourself, right? I'm only going to play World of Warcraft for 2 hours today, and then I'm going to stop and I'm going to do something productive. So it kind of depends what you want to do with life, but I think having a good balance in all of these things is ideal. But thank you for the super chat. Right. Thoughts on no FAP. Again, check out my friend Nikhil's videos on this front. What are the mistakes you made in the past concerning studying and stuff? Mistake I made was not using active recall and spaced repetition. Please tell me, are these live streams going to be often? I'd like to do them once a week. So what's your guilty pleasure? I don't really have any guilty pleasures. And I'm fairly open about most of my pleasures. Can we get a cooking with Dr. Ali segment in the future? Yeah, mate. That's the plan. The nurses at work today were telling me off for eating from my little Tupperwares, and they were saying that I should make a cooking with Dr. Ali type show. So we were trying to brainstorm names for it. If anyone can think of a good name for it, post it in the chat, and I'll send you a gift if it's the one that we end up using. All right, my throat is starting to get really, really dry. I think we got enough content from this live stream to repurpose into Instagram clips, guys. So follow me on Instagram and follow me on Twitch. Have you read Malcolm Gladwell's books? Oh man, I listened to Talking to Strangers yesterday and it was absolutely incredible. At the moment, I'm listening to Born a Crime, which is Trevor Noah's autobiography, and it's really, really, really freaking good. Is high school important as this feels? Yeah, that's pretty important. Any advice in regards to starting a blog? Yep, just do it. Okay, yeah, my voice is actually starting to go. Thank you everyone for tuning in into this ridiculously long ass live stream. And please make sure to follow me on Twitch. I'll put a link in the chat so that twitch.tv/Ali so you can see more of my streams, because I stream more regularly on Twitch than I do on YouTube. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next episode of Tea Time with Ali. Goodbye.